Heavenly Stories.
The morning sun spilled over the hills of Galilee, painting the village in shades of gold and warmth. The streets buzzed with life, merchants calling out their wares, donkeys braying, and the soft murmur of people beginning their day. And yet, amidst the ordinary clamor, a crowd began to gather in a quiet corner of the town square. Word had spread that Jesus of Nazareth had returned to teach. He walked slowly, his sandals kicking up small clouds of dust with each step, his eyes scanning the faces before him. There was a quiet intensity in his gaze, a sense that every soul mattered. Mothers pushed through the throng, carrying toddlers on their hips, while older children clung nervously to their parents' tunics. The air was heavy with anticipation, with hope, with a whisper of something extraordinary about to unfold. One little boy tugged at his mother's sleeve, his eyes wide and searching. He had heard stories, miracles, healings, words that calmed the fiercest storms, but he had never seen this man himself. Hesitant, he peered from behind his mother, unsure if he was brave enough to approach. Jesus noticed. And in that instant, the bustle of the crowd seemed to fade. He knelt to the boy's level, his face glowing with a gentle light, his voice soft but carrying with a power that demanded attention. "Come here, little one. Don't be afraid," he said. The boy's heart raced. Slowly, trembling but curious, he stepped forward. And then, as if a dam had broken, children from all around surged forward, drawn not by spectacle, but by something deeper, a sense of safety, of acceptance, of love they could feel in their bones. The disciples murmured among themselves, confused. They had spent years learning from him, witnessing wonders beyond imagination, and yet they hesitated. "Teacher," one whispered, "the crowd is pressing. Should we send them away?" Jesus looked at them, his eyes steady and unwavering. "Let the children come to me," he said. "Do not hinder them, for the kingdom of heaven belongs to such as these." And in that moment, the air shifted. The children gathered around him, some shyly, some boldly, but all with trust and wonder in their eyes. The adults watched, some skeptical, some moved, as Jesus showed them a truth that shook the foundations of pride and status. Greatness in the kingdom of God is measured not by power, but by humility, openness, and a heart willing to receive love without condition. As the children laughed and ran, some climbing onto his lap, others holding his hands, a quiet miracle unfolded, not of fire or water, not of healings or signs, but of hearts meeting hearts, of innocence being honored, of faith in its purest form being celebrated. And in that laughter, in those small trusting eyes, a powerful lesson echoed through the ages: the most profound strength often wears the face of a child. But this was only the beginning. The days ahead would reveal even deeper truths, showing that the kingdom of heaven isn't just for the children, it's for all who can learn to see the world through their eyes. The sun climbed higher over Galilee, casting its warm glow on the gathered crowd. The village square was alive with chatter, laughter, and the occasional cry of a child. Yet all of it seemed to fade into the background when Jesus spoke. His voice carried over the hum of the crowd, gentle yet commanding, like a soft breeze guiding leaves along a stream. Children clustered around him, some sitting on the dusty ground, others clinging to their parents with wide, curious eyes. There was a palpable anticipation in the air, a quiet urgency that even the adults felt but could not name. The world, with all its rules, worries, and walls, seemed to pause, holding its breath for what was about to happen. One young girl, barely 4 years old, stepped forward. Her small hands were dirty from playing in the sand, and her feet were bare, but there was a courage in her eyes that caught Jesus' attention. She approached him slowly, unsure, yet drawn by an invisible pull of trust. Jesus knelt down, bringing himself to her level, his eyes meeting hers with complete presence. "Do not be afraid, little one," he said softly. "The kingdom of heaven belongs to those who receive it with hearts like yours." The girl's mother watched, tears forming in her eyes. She had seen many teachers, many leaders, but none had treated her child with such tenderness, such respect. Here was a man who saw her daughter not as a burden or a distraction, but as a treasure, as someone whose faith, simple, honest, and pure, was worthy of the highest honor. Nearby, a boy clutched a small toy donkey, his lips trembling with shyness. He peeked up at Jesus, hesitant to step closer. And yet, without words, Jesus extended his hand. "Come," he invited. And the boy, feeling the warmth and safety radiating from this man, released his grip on fear and walked forward. The disciples watched silently, absorbing the scene with growing understanding. This was more than a lesson for children, it was a lesson for everyone. Jesus showed that humility, trust, and innocence were not signs of weakness, but doors to a faith that could withstand storms, doubts, and the weight of the world. As the children gathered, Jesus began to speak, not in riddles, but in truths they could understand. "Blessed are the pure in heart," he said, "for they shall see God. Blessed are those who receive with the simplicity of a child, for their hearts are open to miracles." His words seemed to dance in the air, wrapping each listener in a sense of hope and wonder. And the adults, even those hardened by life's trials, felt something shift inside them. They remembered what it was like to be fearless, curious, and completely trusting. They remembered laughter without reason, the joy of a moment untainted by cynicism. In the eyes of the children, they saw the reflection of a truth too often forgotten: the greatest strength comes not from control or knowledge, but from love freely given and trust fully embraced. By midday, the children were playing around him, some holding his hands, others resting on his shoulders. And Jesus, smiling, allowed the lessons of their innocence to unfold naturally, showing that the path to the kingdom is not through might, status, or pride, but through hearts willing to be open, humble, and trusting, even in the smallest of moments. Yet even in this joy, a subtle challenge lingered for those watching. Could they let go of their doubts, their need for control, their pride? Could they embrace the faith of a child and walk humbly in love? The days ahead would test them, and reveal that understanding the kingdom requires more than listening, it demands becoming. And as the sun began its descent, casting long shadows across the village, the promise remained: the story was just beginning, and the true depth of these lessons was yet to unfold. The evening sky over Galilee shimmered with shades of orange and violet, as if the heavens themselves were leaning closer to watch what was unfolding below. Jesus walked among the crowd, his presence calm yet electrifying, like a quiet storm of love and understanding. The laughter of children echoed in the air, mixing with the soft murmurs of adults who could not tear their eyes away. A small boy, no older than 5, clutched a piece of bread in his tiny hands. His eyes darted nervously at the crowd pressing around Jesus. He had wanted to come forward, to feel the warmth of this man whose name everyone whispered in awe, yet fear held him back. He wondered if he was worthy, if someone like him, small and unimportant, could truly matter. Jesus noticed. He stopped, crouched down, and smiled gently. "Do not be afraid," he said, his voice a melody that seemed to reach straight into the boy's heart. "Even the smallest among you can show the greatest faith. Come." The boy hesitated only for a moment, then stepped forward, his heart pounding. As he drew closer, a sense of peace washed over him, like sunlight breaking through a storm. He handed the bread to Jesus, who took it, blessed it, and shared it with those around. The act was simple, yet it carried a message that resonated far beyond that moment: faith is measured not by power or wealth, but by openness, trust, and the willingness to give what little one has. The disciples watched in awe. They had seen miracles, healings, and crowds moved by words alone, but this was different. Jesus was teaching them not with grandeur, but with humility, not with force, but with love. He was showing them that the kingdom of God belongs to those who approach it with a heart unburdened by pride, a spirit open to wonder, and a trust as pure as that of a child. Nearby, a mother whispered a prayer of gratitude, tears slipping down her cheeks. Her daughter sat on Jesus' lap, giggling as he spun her gently in his arms. The child's joy was infectious, spreading to those around her. And in that moment, the crowd began to understand: greatness in the eyes of God is not in commanding armies or accumulating riches, it is in receiving, in giving, in loving without condition. As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows, Jesus began to speak to the crowd about humility and faith. "Whoever welcomes a child like this in my name welcomes me. Whoever humbles themselves like this will be exalted. For the kingdom of heaven is not for the proud or the mighty, but for those who are small, who are humble, and who trust with all their heart." Even the adults felt the weight of his words. They looked at their children, and in their innocent faces, saw a reflection of the divine, a reminder that the lessons of heaven often come through the simplest, most unassuming hearts. The children's laughter, their trust, and their openness were mirrors showing humanity the path to true faith. And as night approached, the crowd slowly dispersed, but the lesson lingered in the hearts of all who had witnessed it: to enter the kingdom of God, one must become like a child, full of trust, humility, and wonder. Yet the story was far from over. The days ahead would test these lessons in ways none could imagine, revealing that the faith of a child is not just a beginning, it is a challenge, a call, and a doorway to a life transformed. The morning air was crisp, carrying the scent of olive trees and fresh earth. Galilee stirred to life, but in one quiet corner, a crowd had already gathered. News had spread that Jesus was teaching again, and people came not just for his words, but for the warmth, the peace, the unexpected love that seemed to radiate from him like sunlight. Children ran ahead of their parents, eager to be close, their laughter like music echoing through the narrow streets. Some clung to their mothers' robes, shy and uncertain, while others boldly approached, sensing that in this man, there was safety, acceptance, and understanding. Jesus walked toward them slowly, his gaze sweeping over each face with care. He knelt beside a young girl sitting alone on a stone bench, her fingers fidgeting with a small piece of cloth. "Do you trust me?" he asked gently. The girl's eyes widened. She nodded slowly, unsure of what trust meant, yet feeling it stir in her heart. Nearby, a boy held tightly to his mother's hand, trembling at the crowd and the attention. He wanted to come closer, but fear held him back. Jesus noticed him too. He stepped forward, knelt, and extended his hand. "Come, little one," he said softly. And with that simple invitation, the boy's hesitation melted away. The disciples watched, still learning, still questioning. They had seen teachings, healings, and miracles, yet they struggled to understand why Jesus devoted so much attention to children. "Teacher," one whispered, "they are small and weak. Shouldn't we focus on the adults who can understand your words?" Jesus turned to them, his eyes steady and full of compassion. "Truly I tell you," he said, "the kingdom of heaven belongs to those who are humble like these children. Their hearts are open, free from pride and fear. Learn from them, for in humility, there is strength beyond measure." The adults in the crowd began to notice the truth in his words. They watched their children, so small and unassuming, yet so fearless in their trust, and realized that the simplicity of a child's heart was more powerful than their own wisdom or worldly knowledge. In that moment, they began to understand that humility is not weakness, it is a doorway to faith, to love, and to a life that mirrors the kingdom of God. As the day wore on, children climbed onto Jesus' lap, held his hands, and asked innocent questions, each one receiving an answer filled with patience and care. Their laughter rang through the square, breaking down walls of doubt and cynicism. And with every smile, every moment of trust, Jesus revealed a lesson that transcended age: the greatest of all is the one who becomes like a child, who embraces humility and believes with a pure heart. The sun began to set, casting long, warm shadows. The crowd lingered, not wanting to leave, as if the lessons of the day had touched something deep within them. And in that quiet, fleeting moment, it became clear: to follow Jesus is to learn again, to see the world through the eyes of a child, and to embrace faith, not with pride, but with humility, trust, and love. But the journey was far from over. The next moments would test hearts, challenge beliefs, and reveal that the path of faith is often walked hand in hand with those who teach the greatest lessons, the smallest, the humblest, the most innocent among us. The sun dipped low over the hills of Galilee, painting the sky in streaks of gold and crimson. The village square was alive with whispers, footsteps, and the soft rustle of garments, yet a hush fell over the crowd as Jesus appeared. There was something magnetic in his presence, a quiet authority that drew the smallest and the largest alike toward him. Children began to gather, sensing a safety in his gaze. Mothers and fathers carried toddlers, while older children clutched their parents' hands, peering curiously at the man who had captivated the hearts of so many. Among them, a little girl hesitated, holding tightly to her mother's tunic. Her eyes were wide, filled with a mix of curiosity, awe, and a flicker of fear. Jesus noticed her instantly. He knelt, bringing himself to her level, and whispered, "Come, little one. Don't be afraid." His voice was gentle, yet it carried a power that seemed to calm the whole square. Slowly, the girl let go of her mother's hand and stepped forward, her small heart beating with trust she had never known. One by one, the children gathered around him. Some approached boldly, while others crept forward shyly, peeking from behind their parents. And in each child's eyes, Jesus saw the purest form of faith, a trust that asked for nothing but love and gave nothing but innocence. The disciples watched, perplexed and reflective. "Teacher," one asked quietly, "the crowd presses in. Should we send them away?" Jesus looked at them with gentle reproach, his eyes calm but penetrating. "Let the children come to me. Do not hinder them, for the kingdom of heaven belongs to such as these." He picked up a small boy, cheeks smudged with dust and tears, and placed him on his lap. The boy's fear melted into wonder as he gazed at Jesus. Mothers wept quietly, overwhelmed by the tenderness, while others bowed their heads in silent reverence. In that moment, a profound truth was revealed: humility and openness, the simplicity of a child's heart, are the keys to the kingdom of God. And yet, this was not just a lesson for the children, it was a challenge to the adults as well. Could they let go of pride, judgment, and the desire to control, and embrace a heart open to trust, love, and vulnerability? Could they learn that the greatest strength is not in power, but in humility? As the sun sank behind the hills, the children laughed, played, and rested in Jesus' arms. Their innocence became a mirror, reflecting the divine and teaching all who watched that faith is not about knowledge, status, or control, but about trust, humility, and love freely given. The crowd lingered, each person touched in a way words could not capture. And even now, centuries later, the echo of that embrace continues to inspire, a reminder that the smallest hearts can teach the greatest truths. But the story isn't over yet. The next day would reveal how these lessons of childlike faith challenge even the most learned, the proud, and the hardened hearts, showing that the kingdom of heaven opens to those willing to humble themselves and believe. The morning sun bathed Galilee in a soft golden glow, turning the hills and valleys into a landscape of warmth and hope. People gathered once more, eager to hear Jesus speak, yet drawn not merely by curiosity, but by the sense that something extraordinary was about to unfold. There was a hush in the air, a quiet expectancy that wrapped around every heart present. Children ran ahead, their laughter ringing like bells, while parents followed more slowly, carrying their little ones, brushing dust from their tunics, and whispering words of encouragement. Among the crowd, a boy with tousled hair hesitated at the edge, holding tightly to his mother's hand. Fear and wonder battled in his eyes. Jesus noticed him immediately. He knelt, arms open wide, and said, "Come, little one. The kingdom of heaven belongs to hearts like yours." The boy's mother held her breath as he stepped forward, trusting completely in the gentle invitation. One by one, more children approached. Some shy, some bold, all carrying the simplicity of trust that adults often forget. And as they gathered, Jesus spoke to the crowd, his voice carrying like sunlight through the early morning mist. "Truly I tell you," he said, "whoever does not receive the kingdom of God like a child will never enter it." Humility, trust, and love are the keys. It is not power, wealth, or wisdom that opens the door, but a heart that is open, gentle, and free. The disciples listened, the words sinking deep. They had followed him for years, witnessed miracles and teachings beyond comprehension, yet even they were still learning. This time, the lesson was clear: greatness in the kingdom is measured not by influence or achievement, but by humility, by the courage to trust, and by the willingness to receive with a pure heart. Nearby, mothers and fathers watched their children with tears in their eyes. They saw innocence mirrored in the divine presence of Jesus and realized that these small, unassuming souls held a power that even the strongest among them could not claim, the power of pure faith, simple trust, and unwavering love. Jesus lifted a tiny girl onto his lap. She looked up at him with wide, trusting eyes, and he whispered, "You are blessed, for your heart is open." Around them, the other children laughed and played, a living testament to the truth that God's kingdom is made accessible not by force or knowledge, but by the openness of the soul. And in that sacred moment, the adults began to understand: the path to faith, the path to God, is not through pride or mastery, but through humility, love, and the courage to believe like a child. It is a lesson that would echo through generations, reminding humanity that the smallest and simplest hearts may teach the greatest truths. As the sun rose higher, casting its warmth over the hills, the crowd slowly dispersed, carrying the memory of the encounter with them. The children's laughter, their trust, and their innocence had unveiled the heart of the kingdom. And those who had eyes to see understood: following Jesus means embracing faith like a child, and in that embrace lies a power and joy that lasts forever. The story of that day, of laughter, of trust, of innocence embraced by the divine, remains timeless. It is a call to all generations to remember: to enter the kingdom of heaven, one must become small, humble, and trusting, opening the heart fully to love, and in doing so, discovering the greatest strength of all. And the kingdom of heaven is revealed to all who dare to believe.